I don't think it's controversial to say that Chapter 7 might be looking to be the best chapter we've had in years. It feels like older Fortnite again. However, of course, nothing is perfect, and so in this video I'm going to be going over some of the things this chapter has done right and then comparing those with some of the things that maybe could be a little bit better. Now don't worry, this is not going to be your typical rant just mindlessly complaining about how Fortnite's dead and Fortnite sucks, because again, I'm loving this season so far. But there are a couple things I have to say, both straightforward and mainstream as well as controversial, so hear me out on some of these. But I do believe that these things will take this season from almost perfect to perfect and set a good basis for the chapter going forward in the future. Starting out with the map of this season, I'm not gonna lie, they kinda knocked it out of the park. It really does seem like they listened to the community when adding a much smaller map. If you compare this map to the previous one, it's not even close. Like, it actually feels so much easier to run around, so much easier to fight on. It's just smaller. When I first saw this map, I immediately thought it looked like a mix of Chapter 3 and 5. So I might be a little bit biased on this because Chapter 3 is my favorite map. And before you come at me in the comments, yes, I do believe Chapter 1 to be pretty objectively the best map overall for everyone, but that does not mean it has to be my personal favorite. I think the POIs on this map are so sick. They literally all have some sort of distinction from one another. It doesn't feel like I'm running around the same exact spot 20 different times. But on top of their own unique feel from one another, they also have their own unique vibes on their own, while at the same time also feeling like they have bits and pieces of older POIs inspiring them. I don't remember the name of it, but there's one POI that literally feels like craggy cliffs, sweaty sand, and ritzy from Chapter 5 all thrown together, and it still has its own unique spin. That is super cool. For the actual POIs themselves, as well as the whole shape of the map and the biomes, I really don't have any complaints. I would make a comment on the middle of the map feeling kind of barren, but that's just because we're kind of forced to land on the outside of the map. That is one of the issues I was going to bring up, is the surfing wave. I think it looks super cool and it's a really cool idea, but basically being forced to land on the very, very outside of the map every single game is not very good for exploring or experiencing a new chapter. However, that's going to be gone in a couple days, so it doesn't really matter what I have to say on it because it's going to leave anyways. There's a lot of awesome, unique POIs on this map, and it feels really full while also giving them room to expand, something we haven't really seen in the last few chapters. And so my issues with this map don't actually come down to things like POIs or the shape. It comes down to the graphics and the terrain generation. Now, I know that might sound a little odd, but just hear me out. I'm gonna work it all together. It'll make sense. Ever since they brought Unreal Engine 5 out, Fortnite's had these very, very realistic graphics. Between the look and the actual shaping of the way that they make these maps, it's very realistic and it doesn't fit Fortnite. Not only does it just look like something out of a different game like Call of Duty or something, but the way that everything is shaped doesn't fit the player model or the building grid very well. When I compare the first 3 chapters of Fortnite, even though there were graphical and terrain differences, generally they stayed the same and they fit the game. In a season like this where it seems like they want to have a return to what they used to do, they should go all out. They should also return to using something like either graphics from one of the first 3 chapters, maybe Chapter 3 because that's the most recent and most realistic version of still cartoonish and Fortnite-y graphics as well as terrain, or they could go the route of using something like the first couple reload maps they made, using those graphics and that terrain generation, because that's been a huge success. No matter how good of a map you make, it's just never going to have that magic or that Fortnite feel, and I'm never going to be able to get attached to something that's not iconic in the way that the first 3 chapters were. Now, I didn't expect them to change this, and I still don't expect them to, but I think they need to reassess the identity of their game, because that's what these graphics and terrain have done over the last couple chapters, is kind of take the identity out, so people flock to game modes like Reload or the OG/remix seasons, which have graphics and actual terrain and shaping on everything that fits the game more and feels more like seasons that they actually loved. That's honestly my only real complaint with the map, and once we actually get to drop out of a battle bus or whatever drops us down from the sky, and people can more reasonably dispersed throughout the locations, it's probably going to be even more of a blast to play on. And of course, now that the map's done, the other thing to talk about is the weapons. Now, I actually think overall the weapons this season are pretty darn good. Now, I will say sometimes the shotguns do feel a little inconsistent. You can see in this clip here, I'm hitting them for about 70 or 60 with each shot of my blue shotgun point blank. But then in this clip, that same blue shotgun does over 100 damage from farther away. And I think the hit reg even messed up and didn't register that shot as a headshot. Both shotguns just feel a little inconsistent and sometimes feel really weak and then other times feel normal. So I think they just need to slightly buff both of these to make them feel a little bit more consistent in each fight. But the pump shotgun doing 200 damage in the higher rarities is awesome. They need to always keep this in the game. When it comes to the rest of the loot pool, I think it's overall really, really good. It's a great mix of old guns and new guns, as well as some reworked versions of older guns, which I think is so much cooler than what they've been doing recently, which is making all new guns that just usually feel like worse or slightly different versions of the other guns. But there is a few guns that definitely need some changes, and I'm going to go over those. The first one is the sniper, and it's like, why? Why bring back the glorious Reaper with the glorious 4x scope? Literally basically the exact same weapon, but make it do no damage. What's the point? This feels like what they did with the Sharp Tooth, where they're just lazily putting another better gun skin over a worse gun so that people have an initial attachment or subconsciously think they should be picking this up because it reminds them of a better gun. Just make it do the Reaper damage. Like literally just make it the Reaper and we're perfect. We're perfect here. The next weapon is the lightning gun. Now this thing isn't like too overpowered or anything. There is one thing I want to mention, and I'm not sure about this, but I think it might go through builds, and if that's the case, that definitely needs changed. What I am sure about though is that you don't have to actually be aiming at someone. It just kind of has to be in their vicinity and it'll kind of lock onto them. Now this thing doesn't do too much damage, so it's not like overpowered or anything on its own. The problem is when you're being sprayed by multiple people and someone has this thing, you're just kind of done for. So they 100% need to make it so that you actually have to be aiming at someone to do damage, and we should be good here. However, do not think that this season is off the hook, because there is one gun that has absolutely ravaged lobbies this season, and that is the Deadeye rifle. Now, if you would look here, I've made a very detailed visual as to what running into someone with this weapon feels like. I mean, just look at this. Because this is my first time playing a decent amount of Fortnite in a minute, I've been switching between controller and mouse what feels like almost every game, just because it's fun and I'm trying to figure out which one I'll be better on now. And even though I'm switching between inputs and sensitivities, something that is not easy to do, and I'm very washed, I still feel like every time I have this gun in my hands, even if I miss half the magazine, I still absolutely laser whoever I'm fighting. One of the first games I played this season, within maybe 5 or 10 seconds, I had cracked 3 opponents and hit them for a lot of white damage with maybe like 2 magazines of this thing max. And I was missing a lot of my shots because again, I'm washed. I feel like all the other scoped rifles do not be doing all that. I want you to watch this clip. Every single time that I remotely peek anything or try to fight anyone, somebody from a million miles away beams me. And the thing is, I have played every single season with the MK, with the AUG, with the scope, the hollow twister, the red eye, but none of them did this. I think it's the fire rate, honestly. That's the only thing I can think of, is I think it's the fire rate. And if it's not, then I genuinely don't know, but there's something about this gun that makes it so that even if you're not that good, anybody who has this weapon can just absolutely laser beam you from across the map. Whatever is making this gun absolutely lethal in anyone's hands needs to be taken away. Because I'm telling you, as someone as washed as I am, switching between inputs every other game, I should not be beaming people while missing half a magazine. Like, I should not be getting these kills. But other than these changes, honestly, the loophole is pretty good right now. It is the very beginning of a chapter, and so there's always going to be some things that are not balanced, whether unintentional or unfortunately sometimes intentional on Epic's end. But really, it's nothing to complain about when compared to so many other seasons and loopholes. And overall, these are really the only major issues I have with this season. I really like a lot of things they added, like drivable reboot vans, and I like how they're experimenting with gold a little bit more. It just seems like they're trying not to change things too much, but still add innovative, awesome things, which is exactly what they should be doing for the start of a chapter. This season's great so far, and honestly, when it comes to the loophole and the map, they've left themselves a lot of room to grow while still managing to give us things that are awesome as they are. This is the first time since I'd say probably chapter 4 that it's felt like the map and the loophole are actually able to be expanded on, which is what you should be doing for a chapter, is planning for the seasons ahead. Great job to Epic Games for what we've gotten so far, and while there are definitely some tweaks that need to be made, this season's like a solid 8 out of 10 right now. The storyline's back, the Fortnite feel is back, and if they just change these couple of things, I think we would be back in a prime chapter of Fortnite. God bless you guys, and thank you, Epic Games, for actually giving us something awesome. You guys have done good. If you made it this far, then thank you, and make sure to comment below what you thought about this video. Prayers up, we see some changes getting made with these adjustments to the map of the loophole, as well as the battle bus finally being back, thank gosh. And if this season goes on to suck, I'm definitely going to be eating my words from this video.